It's mastery only based on what I'm capable of today, not where I plan to be even another 5 years from now. But it's come through reps, pattern recognition, and refining even in that process. And then the more work I do with people, either one-to-one or as individuals, the more confirmation I get that the path that we're on and how we're helping people is unique and different. Because we're truly seeing transformation for people that would normally take decades happen in days, weeks, or months when they actually are in a place that they can be safe, protected, seen, understood, and connected. And it just so happens too that many of their businesses start to grow and flourish. And the universe starts to rewarding people with financial rewards and health rewards.
When you need some advice, never sacrifice, always get it right. Ask the Planman!
Welcome to Ask the Planman. Everything you want to know about insurance, finance, and more, but we're afraid to ask. I'm your host, Bruce Weinstein, and I believe everybody has a right to reach their own personal levels of planning and achievement in their financial and insurance world. I've been helping clients since 1986, and today I'm going to be bringing you a super special guest, somebody that's been helping me in my world unpack my trash. We're going to be talking with Brian Bogert today, and we're going to talk about what he does to help people unpack some of the baggage that we carry forward into our adulthood from childhood, and this soon-to-be turning 60-year-old, unfortunately, still carries a lot of baggage. So, Brian, welcome to the show. This is Ask the Planman. People are going to say, what the heck does this have to do with insurance and planning? But this is about life planning and my vision. And I wanted to have you on the show because you have made such an immediate impact in my life. Let's just get right down to it. How did you get started in all of this? And tell my listener what exactly it's about.
Yeah, well, let me just start to make it relevant for everybody around the insurance and planning element. Is that I spent 15 years in risk management and employee benefits consulting, which was primarily on the insurance side. And we dealt with all elements of retirement, executive type benefits, securities, property and casualty, employee benefits, and we did it at a large level. So over the course of that 15 years, the last 10, I was a partner in a firm that we scaled from basically nothing when I joined to over 15 million with the span of a decade. And I've been coaching people in that space for a long time. And so here's the reality. Like, is everything we talk about today going to directly relate to insurance and planning? No, but it directly relates to every single element about the human experience. The ways that we're engaging, the ways that we talk to our clients, the ways that we're creating prospects, the ways that we're creating safety and protection to allow our clients to know that they're getting the proper planning so they can allow that energy to let go, right? It's all about helping people step into what they're capable of by letting them lean on our experience and expertise. So for me, I was in that world for a long time. I have to give you a little bit of context to the story on me beforehand, because it's what led to me chasing that path. When I was 7, I was run over by a truck and my left arm was completely severed from my body. I saved the long form version of it for the purposes of your show because I just wanted to hit it right out of the gate. I was with my mom and my brother, though, and they watched the whole thing happen. And my mom, after watching this trauma take place in front of her eyes, the next thing she heard was my brother's voice that said, "Mom, Brian's arm is over there." And as she gazed up the parking lot, she saw across the next 10 feet my muscle cooking like hamburger on the asphalt because it was a 115-degree day in Phoenix, Arizona, right? I have to pause and always acknowledge, whenever I tell this story, I always have to give credit to the woman that's responsible for me being here today. And my mom is one of those, so I always have to say that too. But there was a nurse that walked out of the store right when this took place. And she saw the literal life and limb scenario that took place. And she rushed immediately into action. Now, I've said for years that I was forever indebted to this woman for her choice to go into action. That became even more powerful last August when I met her for the very first time on the 30th anniversary of the accident. Because I learned that she had a friend with her that day who was also a nurse, who had the same set of skills she did, but who decided to go on with her way. Now, I'll be really, really clear. I'm not in any way upset. I've got no energy, intent, no upset feelings. This woman had every right to do that. And I'm in full support of her choice to have done that. But I am trying to impress upon the point, the singular action, the singular choice, any one of you makes in your life can have a ripple effect that can further impact hundreds of thousands, if not millions, close to billions of people. And that's what this woman did. She came over and stopped the bleeding on the main wound and saved my life. And she instructed some innocent bystanders to run inside, grab a cooler, fill it with ice to get my detached arm on ice within minutes. Had she not done one or both of those things, Bruce, I either wouldn't be here with you today or I'd be here with you today with a cleaned up stump. And the last thing I'll say on this before I open and just pause, it's going to take it somewhere else. is that I always want to make sure that every single person who hears my story understands that the more that I've told my story, the more I realize how unique it is. But what I've also realized is that every single one of you has your own unique story. So what's important is that you learn how to pause and become aware of the lessons you can extract from your stories and become intentional in how do you apply them moving forward. We all have the ability to do that, and we also all have the ability to tap into the collective wisdom of other people's stories to shorten our own curve to learning. That's what I hope to do with you today, is hopefully allow you to learn from some of the mistakes and some of the pain that I endured to allow yourself to be free a little bit faster than I was.
Well, right off the bat, it's heavy stuff. And thank you for always being vulnerable and expressing that. And the first time I heard you do that, I was like, holy crap. That's some pretty heavy stuff. And you and I have talked, I came to your workshop retreat for a few days. And one of the things that we talk about is when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so your message, as graphic and powerful as it is, it sticks. And when I say that in the sense of the teacher's appearing for those who are ready, and you're opening up yourself for somebody to say, and you just hit on the head, is we all have our unique story, all have our baggage. We may not have the graphic physical damage that occurred to you, but it certainly came with psychological damage for you as well, as you've discussed and we could get into. So we all have the psychological side. We may not have the physical maiming in the literal sense that occurred to you, and God bless this lady for stepping into action. But I always say there's a great movie out there, Mr. Destiny, with Michael Caine, and not John Belushi, his brother Jim Belushi kind of came on the scene. And it talks about how one event leads and connects dots in totally different directions. And so
Always.
that one event, your Mr. Destiny moment there, literally saved your life. And now as you've worked through your life struggles, as we all have as an adult now, and you said your 30th anniversary. So, you now have things to bestow. And I think that's your message, is we all have something to give. And again, I don't want to get ahead of myself at the retreat, but when we were at the retreat, you didn't realize what the one thing each one of us had to say was going to impact the remaining 5 or 6 of us. And that just kept playing itself out more and more pronounced. And so I want to toss it back to you, but I think a lot of us are living in a level of blinders.
Yeah.
And you don't even realize how much you do impact or touch other people. Now, I'm in a serving business. I'm helping hundreds of people every year in a multitude of ways, planning, insurance, investments, whatever. So I know there is a cause and effect that I do help create and facilitate, and that's what motivates and drives me. Now I'm finishing up my 37th year. But I want to speak to that and have you elaborate more of like how that impact, and we could talk about the retreat, is where each and every one of us were able to share something that resonated, and why that's so important for people to not be clammed up and shut down and feel unworthy, for lack of a better word. Yeah.
Well, I think before we unpack how we did that at the retreat, I think it's probably really important to hit on a couple of factors that I'm sure every single person listening has experienced in some form or fashion, because again, we need to kind of unite through the human experience in some ways, right? I'll use my own story as a launching pad for some of the topics. But when I first came out of the hospital when I was 7, I had a teddy bear in between my arm, right? And the teddy bear was there to hold my arm out because the humerus my arm had to be at 90 degrees directly in front of me for the bone to heal. And inevitably, people would ask me, hey, what happened to you? Right? And I got really, really used to seeing people's jaws hit the ground. And then once they picked those up, 99% of them would pause and they'd turn and they looked to my parents for validation because they didn't believe what I'd just told. Right? My own truth, which was I was run over by a truck and my left arm was torn off. They were expecting me to say I flew off the jungle gym. I flew off the swings. I crashed my bike. But because I was so matter of fact and that was my truth, I got really used to feeling like people didn't see me or understand me. that my truth wasn't going to be believed or accepted, and that I certainly didn't feel connected. So that didn't make me feel safe and protected. It actually caused me to retreat, because if every time I'm telling my truth, it needs external validation for someone to believe me, then what the heck is that about? Then those same people would view me through their lens of what they'd be capable of in my situation, immediately placing limitations. Okay? And at that time, right, all I had heard is if I have a good mindset, good mental toughness, that I'll be okay. But I think what's important to pause here and look at is how many of you listening to this right now, and Bruce, how many times in your life have you not felt seen and understood? Have you felt like your intent wasn't being understood, either based on the actions that are being received or how the person is receiving them, right? How they're being delivered or how they're being received, how we don't feel connected. We often can be surrounded by people and still feel isolated and alone, right? Like so many people identify with those feelings, yet we all still try to fit inside this box that the world has told us we should fit in. So we start protecting ourselves because we don't feel safe. What I didn't realize is the mental narrative I created back then was my armor. And here's what it was. Brian's good, Brian's strong, Brian's capable, Brian can do anything himself. And bro, I fucking crushed it. I did a lot of epic shit that I really did. But I was proving it to myself more than I was proving it to the external world. I just didn't know it. But the human experience we need to understand, because we all experience this. I think we all seek and desire 4 things, Bruce. We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel protected. We all want to feel seen and understood. And we all want to feel connected. Now, these last 2 are the 2 we want the most, but they don't happen unless the first 2 do. And so what happens when we walk into any environment where we don't feel safe or protected? It could be a networking event. It could be a new prospective meeting. It could be going back to visit family, but you've always felt criticized and judged, so you don't actually feel open, right? So the second we don't feel protected and safe, we protect ourselves. Now, this visual, for those of you that are listening, I'm going to walk you through. This is why I'm starting to be known as the trash man, because I think our trash from our past is the thing that creates the armor mostly. And so if we all know what those 35-gallon black trash bags are, imagine unfolding one and holding it in front of you like your proverbial armor to protect yourself. Now, I want you to ask yourself, whoever you're talking to, whether it's your mom or a prospective client or an actual client or your intimate partner, it doesn't matter. Ask yourself, how can you expect that person to see you, understand you, know what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, where your boundaries are, what your love is, what your heart is, what your intent is, how you're going to move through the world, delivered through that opaque force field? And that's assuming, by the way, that they're not carrying their own that's going to further dilute the message. And so many times what we don't understand is the second that we protect ourselves, we actually guarantee that we're not going to get the 2 things we want most, which is to be seen and understood and to be connected. So I think it's really important that we understand the human experience before we can start to unpack the concept of the retreat and how sharing all these pieces really benefits us. I believe that we all seek and desire 4 things. We all seek and desire to feel safe. We all seek and desire to feel protected. We all seek and desire to feel seen and understood. And we all seek and desire to feel connected. These last 2 are the ones we desire the most, but they don't happen unless the first 2 do. So the second that you walk into a place where you don't feel safe or protected, it could be a networking event. It could be a new prospective client. It could be a conversation after a fight with your spouse. It could be family that you're going to visit because you've always felt criticized, judged, and excluded, right? Any time that you are not going to be able to be 100% authentically you because you don't feel safe, your armor goes. Now, for all of you that are listening, I want you to imagine a 35-gallon black trash bag for like an outdoor bin. I want you to unfold that black trash bag and imagine holding it in front of you with 1 corner on each side. That's your proverbial armor. The reason I get to be known as the trash man is not just because of the trash from the past, but the reality of it is that this trash is our armor. It is what we're protecting. So if you put that armor up, now I want to ask you, how could you portray who you are, what you want, your boundaries, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, your heart, your intent, your desires, all of the ways that you can provide service and impact into that person's life, delivered through an opaque force field? And that's assuming, by the way, that they're not carrying their own level of armor and protection that's further diluting the message. Because again, communication both ways, it's as much as how it's delivered and the energy it's delivered with or through the armor, as much as it is about how it's being received and the lens with which we're receiving it. Great example of this is my wife used to ask me a question as simple as this. Hey, honey, what would you like to do with the kids this weekend? But my shame filter would cause me to hear this. My armor would cause me to hear this. Hey, honey, you've not done enough to be a good husband and father here recently, so what are you going to do to make up for it this weekend? My armor's already up. I've already reacted. I've got the defense. And what do? I rattle off the 10 things I've done to show her I'm a good husband and father. How often do those things happen and we aren't even actually hearing or seeing what's actually going on right in front of us? That's because of the trash, the emotional triggers, behavioral patterns, and environmental conditioning that have created intellectual and emotional narratives, belief systems about ourselves that we then seek further information in life to further justify that truth so that we feel further safe, but it actually disconnects us more. So when we think about, these are all universal things, right? Not winning a sale because I didn't have the courage to ask for it. Having a client take advantage of me because they know I'll always say yes and over-deliver regardless of what our scope of service and agreement is, right? These are all things that are protectionary nature that start to take you further away from you because they're protectionary. But they all connect to the same emotional components that we all experience. So whether it's how your dad looked at you when you were 4, how your grandfather told you you'd never amount to anything, how your coaches passed you up, your jobs passed you, whatever the case may be, we've all experienced it. So if we know that to be true, transference and transformation can come through other people's stories. I believe that we all suffer for 4 reasons. The things that are left unsaid, the things we lack permission to feel or say, the things we lack the words to articulate or understand, or the things that are left undone. Every time I tell my truth, every time I tell my story, every time we facilitate a community call or a retreat or a connection amongst others where they share their stories, once they've released it, not only is it actually cathartic and healing for them, because many people don't talk about this stuff for years, right, but it's immediately healing and cathartic for the other people because it gives people permission to feel and say things that they wouldn't have otherwise. And it gives them words to understand and articulate maybe their own situation for the first time so they can say, act, or do whatever is necessary to move through it. That's the power of community. That's the power of vulnerability.
All right, hold on. I'm trying to write them down. As always,
I go fast, bro. You know,
you talk like you're from you're from New York. So words that were unsaid, lack of permission. There was a little bit more behind that. Lack of permission.
Lack of permission to feel or say whatever they want.
Feel or say. Words to understand and
words that we lack. So situations that we lack the words to understand or articulate about our own situation. And the things that are left undone.
Things left undone. Trying to give my friend Keith a chance to catch up because I know he's going to be. What did he say?
Yeah, I got you, bro. But that's the power of a room like you just came into, because to your whole point exactly, what I did know going into that was that you guys would grow as much through each other's collective stories and wisdom as you would through the process of which we were facilitating. Because in every situation, that's always true. But what does it require? It requires a facilitated environment where everyone can feel safe, everyone can feel protected, everyone can feel seen and understood, and everyone can feel connected. And that brings in the concept of protector and connector that we teach, which is to allow leaders to step into that role. So that's a little bit about why these retreats can be so powerful.
Well, let me step back for a second just from personal experience. So, I'm somebody that comes from a broken home. Folks were divorced and, being 5, 7, 8, 10 years of age, not necessarily knowing how to handle that. I was thrown into therapy literally in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Literally. Like Bozo the Clown punching dolls and toys to play with. And I don't know what the whole point of it was, but the evolution and where I'm going to connect the dots and share with the audience simply is there's a difference of sitting one-on-one with a so-called therapist versus the group environment. And as you just broke it down beautifully, the safe, protected, seen, understood, connected. Well, the dynamic of that room with, I think we were a half dozen participants plus you and Ashley, your wife, as the moderators. So there's 8 of us with the energy in the room, and immediately you could feel the safety. You could feel that you could say things. You started to connect with total strangers. I mean, you walk in a house for the weekend with 7, 8, 10 people, camera people. Who are these people? Who's that one? You don't know who's participating and who was helping. So you're getting to introduce, and there's a high level of insecurity right off the bat, right? Who are these people? What am I doing here? When can I go home? Is we all kind of, right? fight or flight, right? Fight or flight. Yeah. So, people where I don't know where I want to go with it in the sense just from sharing experiences. I've done a lot of individual work. My dad became a therapist late in life, and he always loved and benefited, and to this day at 87 still runs his own group therapy sessions. And he loves and feeds off of that dynamic, and I probably never understood it in the way you just broke it down of what it entails, and maybe he doesn't either. Maybe it's just your words, not his understanding. But the collaboration there, and then ultimately I think some of the takeaways is I'm not alone. I'm unique, but I'm not unique in the sense, I always say we all have our baggage. We all grew up with things. The challenge I always found, and it's not necessarily a Mars and Venus and spousal, but not everybody's a willing participant. Not everybody is ready to see the teacher. Not everybody is willing to embrace. And for me, the frustration has been, you said it before about being seen and understood. And, what I walked out childhood-wise was not being seen, not being understood, not being allowed to be heard, and fighting for that existence. Yeah. And then ultimately, not that this is a therapy session, but then I have abandonment theory episodes because my mother died at a fairly young age. Now she's gone. I couldn't fix the things that she did to me or address them or ever feel safe being with her. And now she's gone and have to live with that. And so here I am, depending when we're releasing the episode, 60 years of age, 60, years cycles around this planet and around the sun. And, I'm still dealing with stuff. And I was the old timer in the room and I gave kudos to the you kids, you kids in the room, because it is a lifelong journey. I always say life, no one gets out alive. And we got shit to deal with. I don't curse on my show, but I'll curse.
No one gets out alive, but many people don't even live, Bruce. And that's,
yeah. I mean, I think if nothing else for me, I've never been the inside the box type of person. Anybody that knows me, has worked with me, spent time with me, I'm all about outside the box. So I'm not a conformist. I'm a leader. I'm not a herd. I don't follow. I'm the guy with the machete cutting the trail, right? And so whatever my baggage was, it at least gave me some of that internal strength and fortitude to not be a bystander, not fit in the status quo. Now, it may not have helped me professionally as well as I would have hoped, because sometimes you push the wrong door and it pushes back. But be that as it may, there's plenty of things and people that I used to spend time with that would never do things that were not acceptable.
Yeah.
And so I'm babbling. You could pick up in here, but
it's okay. Yeah, I can. I don't know if you want. I can jump in and reflect on that. I think it is a really powerful thing. I think that whether it's because people think that they're not going to actually heal, they don't think they've got the strength or the courage, they don't believe that human connection is possible, they don't believe that they can have the type of relationship that they want. There are people who have traumas, and a trauma doesn't have to be a physical trauma like we talked about. It could be something that happened to a friend. It could be a way that your parents looked at you. A perceived trauma is only something that creates cellular memory that causes the need for us to better unpack it, understand it, and move through it. So that's what our trash from our past is. I've had clients that have been in their 60s who had something happen to them when they were a teenager. The only people on the planet who even knew that it was real were her parents. Even her husband of 30 years didn't know the story, right? But what had happened is the more time went on, it happened just like trash does, right? If I gave you now 2 full trash bags to hold out in front of you and say you got to hold these, how long are you going to hold them there? Only a few minutes before your shoulders are burning and it feels like those bags have doubled in weight. Our trash from our past is no different. The longer we carry it, the more it incrementally crushes us and the more it takes us further away from who we are. So this woman even used to tell this analogy about how she was like this little crab on the bottom of the ocean and she built up these shells around her so that nobody could actually see her. She was on a bunch of meds. She had a junk room that was filled from floor to ceiling. Like not having relationships, not spending time with friends. In a matter of 6 months after she actually decided to lean in, to actually find a way that she could move forward, find a way to unpack this, she was off all of her meds, sleeping every night, the room was cleared, their business started growing, she reestablished relationships with people, and within a year of actually putting in the work, she all of a sudden was living in the life that she believed would never be. Almost everything we want is on the other side of our trash, but we got to be willing to dig through it to be able to find.
That's the key, is really whatever the block is. And I think safety is the first one on your list. Safety and protected. Well, protected is going to necessarily come from a third party, not themselves, but feeling safe and what they experience is the first piece. And then being with people who are going to make sure they stay or remain protected. But I think that's where, it's the old whack-a-mole. You got used to poking your head out so many times, you just don't want to get whacked anymore. So we just stop and we retreat. And again, it's stuff you and I talked about in privacy and dealing with people in my lives. I think part of the challenge is, I'll rewind. The biggest lesson I probably got from my dad growing up was, I'm the only one who's responsible for my health, maintenance, well-being, and happiness. Nobody else. Brian can't do it for me. My wife can't do it for me. My parents can't do it for me obviously when I'm an adult. And so if you're not responsible for your own health, your own happiness, your own welfare, well, you can't be blaming everybody else. And so where the trap falls is, well, I got adult children. I still want to take care of them and make sure that they're happy. And am I doing the right things for them? And I'm seeking their approval, even though they're adults. And so I'm not living my true life. And the same with my spouse. I'm always worried about her happiness. Am I doing the right things? You said it earlier about the kids and spending more time and how you interpret it and set off a trigger in you, because your map and paradigm at that point was, oh, she must be telling me I'm not spending enough time with the kids.
That's right.
And that's not really what she said.
But shame on it, right? It was telling me that what I was doing wasn't good enough, even though that wasn't at all what she asked. But I think your point on safety is really, really important, Bruce, because it is first for a reason. What's interesting is I like to say now that my wife and I have been together for 17 years. We hid from each other for 14, and she's only felt emotionally safe with me for 12 to 18.
Crazy.
And why is that emotional safety so critical? I couldn't have explained it to you before the last 12 to 18 months because I didn't experience it. I hadn't understood it. But it opens up everything, right? Because once emotional safety, I think, can exist, that also is already implied that you're going to have mental and physical safety, right? Emotional safety and spiritual safety are the two that are so tied to our soul, our existence, the way that we move through the world, the way we experience it. But here's the reality. My wife, I've been an entrepreneur the whole time we've been together. I've had businesses. She's not had any interest in being a part of them. She was sort of supporting me for a period of time in our business in a way that she felt like she needed to. But now that we have emotional safety, now that we've broken generational patterns in our home, now that we've set boundaries effectively with extended family, grandparents in situations so that repeat patterns don't continue for our kids, the more we focus on ensuring that the boundaries are in place so that we can feel safe and protected with each other, the more everything in our life flows. We've got more intimacy, more depth of connection, more trust. And now we're at a point that 2.5 years after unpacking my anger and actually putting in the work to do it, we don't even get triggered by each other 99% of the time anymore. Like, we don't have moments of resistance. We don't get into fights. And when we do, it's so intermittent that we can either flush it through, and then we're spending minutes and moments in that space versus weeks, months, or years like we used to.
Right, the grudge.
And so we get to experience life. But where I was going with that is not until she felt emotional safety did she have any interest in being in the business. My wife's one of the best operators I've ever met. She's one of the best integrators I've ever met, right? She does it in our life consistently. What I didn't realize was I didn't really have a full partner in my business. And in some ways, I was trying to create that through either my chief of staff, my right hand, in 3 or 4 different roles, when in reality, none of them were ever going to be able to be the partner that I'm used to in life. And now that I have that partner in life as my partner in business, it's been unbelievable how that's unlocked everything for us in a way that we never even imagined. And so the safety component is so critical, but That's the only way to build and repair relationships with kids that might be damaged. That's the only way to move forward in a broken marriage. That's the only way in a broken business partnership. You have to reestablish trust and safety, because until that exists, nothing else meaningful will happen.
And that certainly, let's be clear, it doesn't mean it's going to work. It doesn't mean the other party is receptive.
But it's the only chance.
You're going to want to do it.
Yeah.
Right. But it's certainly the only chance in that regard. I mean, I've got failed business partnerships, and based on what happened to me, I'm never going back. Like, I'm not looking to repair that. What they did to me is not something that's reversible. It doesn't matter. So again, you got to kind of pick your weapons. But let me put this out, because to the best of my understanding, you're not a trained therapist, psychologist, MD, and I'm not. There's no knock in that regard. The question really is, how did you get from being that entrepreneur into mastering? And that's really what I want to tout here, is mastering your message, what you do, your deliverables, and helping people without having, and I'm not saying you need formal training, and I'm not saying formal training is worth 2 bits either. That's a whole separate conversation, right? But you don't have that in the sense you have life and you have your learnings. So how did you get it into this point? You said with Ashley, 12, 18 months ago, she wasn't in that position. So where in that 2-year window did all of this kind of come into play, where she eventually got to that comfort zone, and then this thing, what seems to me, mushroom cloud for you in a massive way, because now she's on board, and there's nothing better than having your partner totally bought in without headwind and hugging along and resistance. So how did you get from A to B? Like, how did that really come together in the last 2 years? Is that a fair question?
Well, it would be cool if it was really just an A to B journey, but it wasn't. It was like A, B, C, D, E, F, like constant.
Couple stops at Z, back over to T.
Couple stops at Z, start back over, like return back to home, whatever, right? Like, played the game of life. But, here's I'm going to give you an answer that I don't mean to sound cheeky, and I want to be really clear when I say this. I don't mean it to impress upon me in any way. It was really doing the work to get back to the core of me, and there was a handful of other things involved in that. If I'm really, really clear with myself, and I can accept and look at elements of my truth, even in ways that I didn't believe they were true for a long time, I have always had a gift to see people in a way that many don't. So that, first and foremost, is something that I have to own. For whatever reason, I have an ability and some level of an intuition. However, that was beating the fuck out of me in life to the point that I wasn't utilizing it. It was about 27 when I started to wake up to that again and realized that I had lost who I was. And so really the last 11, 12 years are where most of the transformation came from. I hired my first coach around the age of 28, 29. And the first month of working with him, he goes, "Bogert, you got to be doing this." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You need to be coaching. You need to be speaking. Like, you're always helping people. Everything you've done with philanthropy, everything you've done in the community, everything you've done all these blah, 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 blah. Yeah, whatever, dude. I'm paying you a lot of money not to tell me how great I am, so fuck off. Like, I don't want more added to my plate. I'm trying to refine and grow in here." And he goes, yeah, whatever. He trickles it for 9 more months. Now, something I left out is I did get a psychology degree, and I did get a business degree, and I got a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Science, 2 diploma degrees in 4 years, because I was like, well, I like business and I like psychology and I love people, and I've studied people and human behavior since I can remember. And so I do have a psychology base lane, but it's an undergrad degree. I don't claim to be a psych, right, by any means. But that said, I do believe in reps, I believe in patterns, and I believe in really understanding and applying ourselves. So I had to learn how to lean into my natural gift. I had to get enough repetitions to be able to understand what I was reading was real, or at least indicative of real. And then I had to start guiding people through it. 5 years I did coaching that was really just mindset coaching. And even my language then was like, what do you think about, right? What do you think about the next steps? I never talked about feeling. I never talked about the integration of thought and feeling. It's been the last 5 years where I've been able to really refine and come into clarity around my message. And if I am, and that's been around the timing of me better understanding the importance of emotion and human connection. Because again, when I shut off physical pain because it exceeded my ability to cope, I shut off mental pain, physical pain, spiritual pain for 20, 25 years. I didn't even know that I wasn't feeling. But if we don't feel, we don't heal. So that was the turning point. And then my wife in 2019 pushed me to basically point out how she saw me in a way that I wasn't seeing myself and what she believed I was capable of. And that put the wheels in motion for us to execute the buy, sell, and other business 10 months later. And so it's been since June 1st of 2020 that we've gone really, really hard at this path. And I talked openly with you guys at the retreat. Though, to your point, the mushroom cloud feels like it's existing right now. And yes, we feel like we're strapping onto a rocket ship that we're going to have to somehow figure out how to navigate. That's been a really good blessing, but it's also on the tail end of a lot of destruction and a lot of loss. I fucked up a lot. My messaging has changed 2 or 3 times over the last 3 years to really get more and more clear. We're still refining and working on it. So you call it mastery. It's mastery only based on what I'm capable of today, not where I plan to be even another 5 years from now. But it's come through reps, pattern recognition, and refining even in that process. And then the more work I do with people, either one-to-one or as individuals, the more confirmation I get that the path that we're on and how we're helping people is unique and different. Because we're truly seeing transformation for people that would normally take decades happen in days, weeks, or months when they actually are in a place that they can be safe, protected, seen, understood, and connected. And it just so happens too that many of their businesses start to grow and flourish. And the universe starts rewarding people with financial rewards and health rewards. Because truly, I believe that the greatest amount of resistance and interference that exists for people is in a misalignment between their intellectual and emotional narratives based on how they see themselves. Or when they're incongruent in the actions in life versus who they really are. Those two things take people away where they lose themselves, they start dying, they are not living, they're falling in the selection of success, they're not actually feeling alive and moving and creative. We unlock people so that they can actually live within their power and potential. But I had to be my best case study. I had to do the work. A lot of the frameworks that we teach came from me having to better understand myself, right? Everything around the human experience, the suffering paradigm, our thinking, feeling quadrant, all of it were all things that I created because I didn't have a model that helped me get where I wanted to be. And I've been in lots of therapy. I've had lots of coaches. I've done lots of things. We had to create a new path so that people could see what's possible.
You know, there's the tone, the theme, and the tie-in, I think, to the Planman is, you know, we talk about body, mind, spirit. You know, Coach Bird, you're familiar with what you're talking about. And it's putting everything congruently together, because otherwise when you have that disconnection, and I suffered from it, you're aware, my listeners are aware, you know, I'm in the process of losing 70 pounds. I've gotten to 60 pounds. I've bounced a little bit around, and I've gone from the food weight loss side to an exercise and tightening my body and getting my 60-year-old physique in some sense of where I want to be. But man, the pleasure and the enjoyment of that journey and the support that I've been able to commandeer along the way. I hold myself accountable. People are like, dude, you're helping us. Like, I'm losing 20 pounds because of you. I'm doing this because of you. I went the other day, I got my blood pressure. I'd never heard or seen a number like that from my doctor before. I'm like, it's like 10 points lower. Like, it's beyond any, and I always had good numbers, 120 over 80. And now I'm like 112 and 70 or something. Like, oh yeah, you are, bro. That's really good. And I'm like, well, that's not old HRV in the last month. It's creeping up. Tell everybody what that is. HRV. So I use Oura Ring. And I've been using that now about 6-8 months. And Brian's very big on HRV, which is heart. What is it? Heart rate variability. Now, I'm going to totally butcher how they measure it, what it actually means. All I know and all I care about is what does it actually tell us about our bodies. Yeah. HRV, heart rate variability, is essentially a measurement around the stability and health of your nervous system. Primarily your autonomic nervous system, which is your sympathetic and your parasympathetic, which is the foundation for everything. Cognitive functioning, functional and fluid movement, all of the ways that we actually operate all tie down to that nervous system. So, for example, myself, my body was in fight or flight for almost 30 years. Right? The physical trauma and the cellular memory of that trauma caused me to be in a reactionary, heightened fight or flight state. It zapped my adrenals. It absolutely wrecked
the way that I was regulating myself, and my nervous system was constantly on edge and at its capacity. So the last 18 months is one of the most profound shifts that I made, which was actually putting a targeted focus around getting my HRV number to increase and stabilizing my nervous system. I've not only done that now very effectively, I more than doubled my HRV in less than a year. I was a third of what it should be, or the normative range would be in a man of healthy age for me, like mid 30s to mid 40s. I was a third of what it needed to be. Just that alone, focus of getting my nervous system stable, changed everything in my world. It opened up my capacity. I'm now operating with over 100 days, zero physical pain after almost 31 years of daily physical pain. And I believe it's a direct correlation to the stability of my nervous system. So it is one of the things that I focus on, particularly for people who get triggered or are in a reactionary state, because there is 40,000 cells in your heart called sensory neurites. They're brain-like cells that carry cellular memory. And what they've shown is that if you go through the intellectual process of processing the patterns of your past through therapy, you aren't actually feeling it, actually getting yourself in your body and focusing on the physical natures of ways to actually create that healing down here, that you won't actually heal. If we don't feel, we don't heal. We don't actually move, and our nervous system is literally the foundation for all of it. But most people aren't focused on their nervous system. They're focused on the external factors that they think are the strategy and tactics that will get them there, versus about helping them be able to navigate the chaos of life, but still be centered and grounded. That's the trip. Most people are trying to remove all the pain, remove everything. It's about living within it and being okay.
Is the word stress a good analogy?
Stress and anxiety are things that tap the nervous system. Yeah.
I mean, so if you're talking in the sense of de-stressing, if we're highly stressed and the HRV level's down, I would think they go hand in hand, because you're going to be short triggered. You're under a lot of pressure. I got that report due at work. I got to make this payment. I'm behind on my bill. Like whatever it is that we're carrying day in and day out adds to the stress factors, right?
Right.
And so if you're not eliminating some of those pieces, so your methods in that regard. So I think I was single digits, right? I think I was like 9 or 11, and you're like, I don't know how you're alive. Like you're giving, like it was so low. But I'm like, it's not my pulse rate. It's this thing. I'm like, is that so bad? Like I don't know. Right. So it's not a pulse. So some of the things that incorporated were breathing techniques, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to just de-stress at the end of the night, and so in that regard, so I still get different reports on my app, but I've seen 25 come up. So somebody who was single digit or low teens at best, I've seen 25 and 27, but it depends. There's a night one, there's a day one, I don't know, but I've definitely moved up, and I've taken away things from the retreat that I've implemented, and I'm always a work in progress. So I'm working and making strides, and I've been going to bed earlier, and I've been meditating, and I've been journaling, and I've just tried to be more present.
You've also been doing some cold plunges and some sauna work with some other people at the retreat, dude. I heard about that last weekend.
Yeah, we were talking about it. What I want to do is share some of the pieces we did at the retreat before we start to wrap up. But yeah, you just hit it. Tell everybody who's not familiar with the whole, because this seems to be a big movement going on with the cold tub, the cold dunks, whatever we're referring to them as. But what's behind that? If there's a science, but what's behind it? Because yes, I've done it. I want to do it. I did it the second time. I did it twice with you. I did it twice when I was with Brady, 2 sessions at the same time. And I definitely want more of it. And it was a lot less painful than what I'm getting used to.
Yeah.
But
many people know of it. Many people know of it as the Wim Hof method, just because he's the one who popularized it. But it's been something that has been used for years in sports recovery, in different things. And so essentially cold exposure, and I'm not going to talk cryotherapy, because cryo and water, like cold water immersion, I experience differently. So though they're correlated often, cryo didn't have the same near effect on me. And many people I've talked to have experienced the same thing. Better than nothing, but it's limited, I think. Typically, cold exposure is going to be anywhere between 40 and 48 degree water, right? 50 is kind of the minimum to get some of the benefits. I like it on the colder side, but typically after about 42 degrees below that, you're not going to get much more incremental benefit. But essentially 2 minutes in cold exposure does a few things. It boosts your metabolism. It increases the production of brown fat, which is the healthy kinds of fat that burn the yellow fat, which are the unhealthy kinds that we create. So you get some physical benefits immediately, but it is also one of the singular best things for stabilizing the nervous system. When you're in that cold exposure, if you walk in with tension, you're probably not walking out of it with tension. It's all about reducing the shiver effect and actually giving yourself the ability to work through that. Because 40-degree water, we want to shiver, we want to shake. That's our body in fight or flight state. So we're actually conditioning ourselves as well through the ability to get through the fight or flight and get ourselves to be centered and calm within the cold. There's muscular benefits, there's joint benefits, there's blood flow benefits. It is significant. I like it best in combination with sauna work because a sauna, an infrared sauna in particular, heats you from the inside, and it actually pushes all of the negative toxins, things that don't serve us, out through our sweat. And then cold exposure immediately following brings everything back to center, and it literally allows us to see ourselves more clearly, have more energy, more focus. Sleep gets improved, which has an impact on HRV. There's all these ancillary benefits. So if anybody isn't familiar with it, I just encourage you to do some research. It's something I've done multiple times a week now for about 18 months. And I'm going to go as far to say with the hundreds of things I've done for my body to focus on pain, my nervous system, and a variety of things, movement, for working out, therapy, stretching, you name it. Cold exposure is probably hands down the most impactful. And they're actually showing that people who do a 30-minute sauna session in combination with cold exposure multiple times a week are actually getting a better cardiovascular exercise and conditioning than the traditional treadmill, of stationary bike, the elliptical. So it actually has health benefits too, for weight loss, for feeling better in your skin.
Well, my experience was, and it ties to what you're saying, is I had to concentrate, I had to focus, and as you were there for the one and not for the other, so I had to channel you, the second time, and it was a matter of regulating your breathing because your body's a little bit shocked by the sudden temperature drop, so you're trying to catch your breath, and so. But the whole point is, I'm closing my eyes if those aren't watching, is you're centering, you're focusing, and you're breathing, and you're getting yourself to relax and calm down. So in a very stressful dunk, instantaneous, right? I made this massive splash with you guys. I jumped in quick because I got to get over with because
nobody else go in the water over the edge until you got in. It was great.
I can't. I'm a bigger boy. But, I can't, when a pool's cold, I can't climb in because once you get to the privates, it's game over. I can't get there. My legs are cold and now I got to get the boys in there and it's so you got to go in, you got to jump in. So once you're there, you start concentrating, caught my breath. I don't think the tubs were as cold as when we were with you. So that helped a little bit. But the breathing technique and the relaxation that I've been doing since the retreat. So we're recording mid-June. I think I was out there about a month ago, right? It was middle end of May, 5-6 weeks ago. And I've instilled that. And so as you said, the byproduct has been improved HRV rates with some consistency. But, more to go, where to go. And I'm juggling on the balls like everybody else. It's not the world of excuses. You just make the time if you want to make the time, and doing it. So it was a wonderful experience. So real quick, we did 4 exercises, for lack of a better word, with you. So as we start to wrap this up, let's talk about those 4 because it ties into what you've been saying: safe, protected, heard and listened and connected. So. We did the cold plunge. We did the heating, and the cold plunge was one of the 4 activities. We boxed. You had a boxing instructor.
Those are vegetable. Bruce packs a fucking punch.
I'm the world's most passive individual. I've never thrown a punch at a human being in my life. I would definitely be the flight over fight person in all likelihood, depending on how big they were. And to Brian's point, I got a rhythm going, and man, my right hand, everybody's like, dude, you're like clobbering the guy. Like, so interesting, and I'm trying to find something maybe here I could do a little bit more freaky. But yeah, we did box, a lot of anger in there coming out. We done yoga.
Totally.
So go ahead. So break down the four things. I touched on it, but how they correlated and why you put that in front of us.
Yeah. So I'm a big believer that most of us have the greatest opportunity to learn through what we can physically experience, right? If I think about so many of my profound lessons, the reason I had to grow and do certain things, it's because of the physical nature of my injury that forced me to adapt and look in ways that were different. And so when we're teaching the concepts of emotional safety, mental safety, spiritual safety, right? Physical is often how we can start to translate that for ourselves and many other people. So we did yoga, I think it was the first morning, and with the sole intent of getting ourselves moving, stretching, feeling good in our bodies. Like, again, the safety and protection in that environment, the energetic flow, the way that we're working through it. I believe that those types of methodologies in yoga help us see and understand ourselves better. We get to connect with ourselves in certain poses. And so it's a really intentional way to center and bring ourselves down. Again, yoga also has a positive effect on the nervous system in terms of its calming effects. And so we started there. You know, the cold and the hot exposure is about really testing the limits and the contrast of life that's really required, right? We go from 170-degree sauna to 42-degree water back to back, and it's a process for people. Many of you never did it before, and yet you walked out of there blown away by what you were not only capable of in that experience, but how you physically benefited from it almost instantaneous, right? Everyone felt the positive effects. I wanted people to feel that. What I believe is that the water also gives us elements, again, of seeing and understanding ourselves, connecting with ourselves at the deepest level. Because when you're sitting there in that cold, that you're not in your body in many cases, you're disconnecting, you're really centering, you're feeling everything, but you're calming. Boxing is clear protection. If you don't know how to physically defend yourself, if you can't feel physically safe, it'll be really difficult for you to find places that you can also exhibit emotional safety. So the boxing made obvious sense. And then the last one was massage. And massage was about surrender. It was about allowing someone else to care for you. It's about allowing yourself to feel safe and protected underneath someone else's hands in a way that you're connected to them and that they're seeing and understanding and interpreting the nature of your body. So these four physical elements that we did overlaid with obviously the rest of the agenda and the structure with the exercises that we led you through collectively and as individuals. And it was interesting because we did have a session where we actually got deep and we talked completely about why we did these things and what were people's experiences with them. And, you know, it's one thing to experience it. It's another then to reflect upon it and understand very clearly the intent behind it and what we all took away from it. And these are all things that I do in my normal life to keep myself moving. So in a lot of ways, it's also showing you guys a different way of living and different tools to help you on your path that many either don't talk about or don't have, a lot of knowledge of.
I'll go to the massage piece because I recall the correlation. I want to make sure I'm framing it the right way. Is most human beings are givers. We'll put our hand out to help. But where we tend to fall short is asking and receiving help back. And I took that away, that the massage as its entity is a way to accept somebody else's giving to us.
Beautiful.
And a lot of times, and some of the conversation interaction was, if Brian's going to offer to help me with something and I don't feel worthy of accepting it or wanting to accept it because I'm the giver and it's hard for me to ask for help and receive the help, but then I'm also denying Brian the opportunity to feel good about helping me, because and again, a disconnect, if you're really listening to what we're saying here, is how great do you feel when you help somebody else? You feel great. Picking up a dinner check, helping them spot them at the gym, opening the door for them. Like, these little things make you feel good. I can't tell you, I think I said this to you, that I walk around, I go to Costco and I buy those 40 bottle cases of water, which if a bottle weighs a pound, weighs 40 pounds. Okay. And we live in a very mixed retirement area in South Florida, right? God's waiting room down here. And so there's tons of old people walking around. That's where we go, South Florida, God's waiting room. And we have a neighborhood literally that, a lot of the places are gated and they got the signage of the name of the development. We got a place around the corner called Journey's End. Like, really? Who thought of that? Journey's End. Like, this is the community in Journey's End. It's not, and by the way, it's not a funeral home. Hi, Sullivan. It's not a nurse, it's not a funeral home. It's not a nursing home. It's not a cemetery. It's just a regular community like Journey's End. Anyway, so I walk around Costco. I'm getting my water, and I'm keenly paying attention to who's walking up, male, female, and age. And inevitably, there's 2 or 3 older people, older couples, and there's no way in heck they're picking up that 40-pound case of water and getting it on their cart. And I could tell they're hesitant. And I say, may I help you with that? And they, oh, that's so nice. And I love doing it. And I'll do it in the parking lot when I see them trying to get it out of their car. Right. I was walking up the other day and this lady sitting there and I'm like, how is she doing this? Like, she had to be in her 80s. And I'm like, ma'am, can I help you with your order? She's like, oh, that would be lovely. She was, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I'm like, so anyway, so the point is, it makes me feel good.
Of course.
And so if she had said, no, thank you, or if Brian says, no, thank you, well, he's denying me feeling good in that moment because he's not willing to receive that help and what's his baggage behind it. And so that to me was the big correlation from the massage piece of it. But a big takeaway for me coming home, besides the right hook or right punch I had, was because I'm not good at it. I'm not good at, like Rob and I always say, like, we're the ones doing it. Nobody seems to do it or offer it, and then it's like, well, when we do, it's like, are we really receptive? And it's emotional when we've had people do something unexpected to that level. And I'll give a shout out to Missy and John, our friends Missy and John. So we lost our dog Piper a few months ago, and they love the dog. They're dog owners, and we pretty much said, like, look, we're having a service come in, and, Piper's, we're going to have to let her go. And dude, they were over so fast to come say goodbye and support us. And are you okay? And it was so moving to have somebody actually come do that for us. And Robin and I looked at that of like, wow. And again, we say, like, we would do something like that, but for us to have it done to us was really powerfully moving and emotional, and it just endeared them to us at such a higher level than we'd already had, because they just embraced you in that moment of sadness and vulnerability and sorrow. And again, their path, they've lost their pets too, right? So they know, and they know what pain you deal with. So anyway, so receiving, I think, is a big part of the lessons here, of allowing people to give you. You don't have to go it alone. Look, in my notes coming into this, I was like 2 or 3 actionable steps, but I think we gave them a whole boatload of things with or without our help that we can start doing as a listener here for themselves, the meditation, the cold tubs, what have you. But I do want to promote what you're about further. So if people don't want to do it themselves, or they need something more, you're going to be doing more retreats in the future. You've got a community, but we'll put some info in the show notes to reach you, but tell us more about some of the activities, where people can find you, what kind of things you can offer them at very low entry points. I always tell people, it's not money, it's time. If you don't have the time, the money's not going to matter. You got to make the time for it. So why don't you give a quick breakdown of some of those things? I'm not sure. The episode is going to release in a couple months, so I don't know how short-term some of your activities are. So just think future, but
you're right. We did give a lot of actionable stuff, but I want to give one action for everybody who's listening, and then I'll talk about some of the other pieces. A lot of people are consistently asking, how do I even know if I have trash? Right? Like, how do I know I have things I need to work through? Right? Because that's the hardest part, is like being able to raise awareness around it, start to be able to own it so that we can unpack it, flip our lid, and move through it. That's like the whole deal. And so one question And if you feel anything in response to this question, you have trash. Who was the last person that made you feel like garbage? If you felt anything in that, there is some cellular memory, some pattern, something that's probably showing up as your biggest problem in life, business, relationships, and health. So if you want clarity on understanding the energetic sources on the things that make you more authentically you versus not, create 2 lists. On one list, one side of the list, I want you to write all the people, places, sources of information, environments, places you go to, activities you partake in that light you up, that make you feel like you, that you cannot wait to get back to see that person, cannot wait to do that activity again, cannot wait to be back in that environment, that you could be there for 8 hours and it felt like 1 because it just flew by. Now I want you to create the counter list. All the people, places, sources of information, environments, activities that you partake in that leave you feeling defeated, unworthy, disconnected, not appreciated, low frequency energy that, man, 1 hour felt like 8 because I'm slamming my head against the wall and I cannot imagine going back into that environment. Here's the reality. Most people have a lot on each list and many don't do anything about the negative side, meaning they don't try to diffuse it, they don't try to remove it, they don't try to go through it, they don't try to transform it, right? This is your greatest opportunity to remove the resistance and energy drain from your life if you focus intentionally on healing through fixing, removing everything that exists on this list. Now, can you do everything? You might not be able to. You may say, I've got to keep my extended family or my parents or whatever, despite what toxicity they bring, they're still going to be an active part of my life. Got it. But at least be aware of the source and how they make you feel so that you can own it and you can navigate in and out of that. So that question and that activity, simply put, we want to impact 1 billion lives as quickly as possible. So we've got a variety of solutions that are both free or very, very low pay so that there's zero barrier of entry for people to get access to the help they need. Our community is one of those places that will exist, but our community will be shifting very likely in the near future because of what we're building for our August launch. We are actually putting together a very robust program that's a 12-month program that's going to allow people how to transfer and transform their waste into wealth and understanding where and how it's connecting and converting in their lives and businesses the most. So we've got an extremely robust platform of resources, courses, and elements to help people show up in the world more effectively. And the way to engage in that will be through a series of webinars and 3-day virtual events that we're going to be hosting for you, either free or very low dollar, to evaluate whether or not this is something that would align with you. We will still be doing retreats. We've got live shows. We've got ways that we want to help people. So if you're interested, go to brianbogert.com or @BogertBrian on any social media channel. And we love to engage with those that engage with us. So shoot us a note. Let us know how we can help.
It's Bogert. Bogert is his last name. We'll put it in the show notes. What do you have a launch date for August? I'll try and get this episode out fast.
I think our very first webinar is the 9th of August. I think our second webinar is the 10th. And then the first 3-day event is the end of August. It's like the 25th, 26th, 27th, somewhere in there. I don't remember the exact dates on that one, but yeah, we'll be launching it. Our second webinar is actually going to be on the 31st anniversary of the accident, which will be pretty special. So I'm looking forward to that event.
Well, thank you so much. Let me give some recap here. We've been talking with Brian Bogert here on Ask the Planman. Everything you want to know about insurance, finance, and more. I use the more to take liberties to bring super guests like Brian here today to help us get into unpacking your trash from your past. Brian gave us some really strong takeaways having to do with being safe, being protected, being seen and understood, and most importantly, I think for most of us, is being connected. Gave us some great tips. I like the last piece, making the good list and the bad list. And as much as we want to add to the good list, a lot of times it's just a matter of getting rid of some of the bad. This is another takeaway I had as a kid growing up is my dad used to say, think about the energy it takes holding a beach ball under the water when you're in the pool of the ocean and how much you're fighting. So take a visual, folks. You have that beach ball and you're trying to keep it suppressed under the water and whatever the gravity, whatever the pressures of the air or the water, whatever it is, and you're struggling. And then when you let go of the ball and it pops up in the air, now there's no more stress, there's no more pressures and the relief. And that's what we're trying to get to, is getting the release of that negative energy out of your lives so that you feel freer and more at peace and in Brian's words, safe, protected, seen, and connected with. So Thank you, my friend, for being here. I think this was great. I hope the interruption with the power loss doesn't screw up the front end of this, but hopefully my people put it together. Any closing thoughts before we bid adieu?
My only closing thoughts are I want to encourage everyone to continue to lean into you further. Having spent time with Bruce, his heart, if you've not met him in person, is so evident and so real. He jokes around the age gap and us young ones, but he was kind of a proverbial father or, creepy uncle for us at this retreat, whichever one you want to call it. But Bruce, I really want to honor and thank you, because what's been really beautiful is the more you've gotten into your skin, even in the time that I've known you, your impact continues to increase as your vulnerability and authenticity does. And so I want to honor you for the work that you've continued to put in, the 70 pounds you've lost, the reversing your business, your life, your relationships in such a powerful way. Bruce is setting an example of what's possible and that it's never too late to start, because the reality of it is it's not about how long you live. It's about what you do at the time you're here. Bruce is a demonstration, an example of, regardless of how long you've been carrying something, it's never too late to let it go. And I just really want to honor you, my friend, and encourage everyone to continue to lean into you.
I have to cut the black because I'm crying over here. Thank you. That's very sweet. I appreciate that. And yeah, I try and keep that path. So thank you. I don't have nothing else to say to that except thank you. I'll accept it with grace and humbleness. So I appreciate it. All right. We're going to bring it to a close again, everybody. This has been a fantastic episode of Ask the Planman. Please like, share, subscribe. Go find Brian at Brian Bogert, BOGERT.com. Look for his events coming out in August. The community. What about the community? How do we find the
community? If it's on email or on DM, you can just go ahead and shoot me a note with rapid fire community, and we can get you 30 days free in it. Or we can also get you the registration link for 30 days free so you can put it in the show notes, and hopefully people can just jump in if they feel necessary.
Okay. And as always, folks, you reach out to me, 844-PLANMAN, Bruce at asktheplanman.com, planman.tv. Like, share, subscribe. Please, we need more YouTube followers and subscribers. Hopefully, most of you stayed to the end to hear that wonderful shout out I got. So thank you again, Brian, for being with me today. Stay well, be blessed. And until next time, folks, when you need some advice, always get it right. Come Ask the Planman. I'm your host, Bruce Weinstein. Until next time, you stay well. Thank you.
Finance, insurance, and more.